The World Cup just ended, and if the numbers hold up like they usually do, tens of millions of people around the world just discovered they actually like football. Congratulations, and also, I'm sorry, because now comes the hard part. You have to pick a Premier League club, and nobody's going to warn you how serious this actually is. Here's the thing nobody tells new fans. This decision doesn't have an undo button. You can switch careers, cities, even your entire personality if you're feeling ambitious. You cannot switch clubs. Once you're in for life, through relegations, boardroom disasters, and years where your team is genuinely difficult to watch. So picking based on who's currently winning is close to the worst strategy available, because currently winning has an expiration date. What doesn't expire is the actual experience of being a fan of that specific club, season after season, for decades. So let's actually do this properly. I'm going to walk you through all 20 clubs, grouped by the kind of supporter each one turns you into. First question, do you want to win, and do you want to win now? Two clubs fit that. Arsenal spent the better part of 2 decades being the club that promised every single August that this was finally their year. It typically wasn't. That pattern became such a running joke that fan sentiment surveys have repeatedly ranked Arsenal supporters among the most criticized fan bases in English football, with a huge share of that criticism specifically about premature celebrating. And then, eventually, the pattern actually broke, and Arsenal genuinely became one of the sport's dominant forces again. If you want a club that plays meticulous, almost architectural football, where every set piece looks rehearsed to the inch, this is your club. Just know you'll be reminded about it for a very long time. Liverpool is the other option here. It's one of the 2 or 3 most globally supported clubs on the planet, and a European night at Anfield remains one of the genuinely unmatched experiences in club football, something opposing players themselves have described as physically uncomfortable to walk into. But there's a rite of passage attached. Within minutes of meeting any Liverpool fan, you will hear about Istanbul, 2005, even if you weren't alive for it, especially if you weren't alive for it. Maybe winning immediately isn't actually the appeal, though. Maybe what you're after is a story. 3 clubs came up from the championship this season, and one of them has an outright remarkable one. Coventry City are back in the Premier League for the first time in 25 years, promoted as champions under Frank Lampard after being in the 4th tier of English football less than a decade ago. If you want to feel something rather than simply win something, that's a genuinely compelling place to start. Ipswich Town also came back up, and their supporters know exactly what tends to happen next to promoted sides in this league, and they're doing it anyway, which says something about resilience, if nothing else. And Hull City completed the trio, coming up through the playoffs. All 3 of these clubs will likely have a difficult first season back, and that's fine, because survival, not silverware, is the actual story here. But maybe you're drawn to struggle specifically. 2 clubs have built entire identities around it. Manchester United remain, by trophy count, one of the 2 most decorated clubs in English football history, with arguably the most recognizable shirt in the sport globally. They're also, consistently, one of the most polarizing clubs in the country, adored and resented in roughly equal measure. Their own supporters have openly described the last several years as an extended rebuild, and at a certain point, a rebuild that long starts to just become the permanent state of the club. But when United genuinely click, and historically they eventually do, very little in football is louder. Tottenham occupy a strange, specific space of their own. Their stadium is widely regarded as one of the best in Europe, arguably the best. The football, most weeks, is genuinely attractive to watch. And then, reliably, at the moment it matters most, something goes wrong. That's not really a flaw in the club at this point. It's become the actual product. Support Spurs if you find hope more interesting than certainty, and plenty of loyal fans have made precisely that trade. Maybe pain isn't the goal either. Maybe you want to feel clever instead. Some clubs can't spend their way to success, so they've built entire operating models around outthinking everyone else. Brighton have essentially become a professional talent pipeline with a football club attached to it. Find a 19-year-old in a league nobody's paying attention to, watch him become one of the best players in his position within 18 months, sell him for tens of millions, repeat the whole process. It's a genuinely elegant business model, and it means you will fall for a player and then he'll simply be sold, and everyone will tell you it was smart business. It usually is. You'll still be a little sad about it. Brentford run a similar playbook with a data-driven edge, having built a genuine tactical advantage around set pieces at a time when most of the league was still underinvesting in that area of the game. Support Brentford if you like being ahead of the curve and being willing to mention it later. And then there's Bournemouth, which remains a slightly absurd sentence to say out loud. A quiet seaside pound of under 200,000 people, with a pier, a beach, and a Premier League football club, and only two of those three things feel like they should logically coexist. A decade ago, they were playing fourth-tier football. Now they regularly take points off clubs worth many multiples of their entire budget. Support Bournemouth if you want a permanent reminder that this sport still doesn't always make sense. Maybe none of that matters to you and you simply want noise, atmosphere, the full sensory experience. Several clubs specialize in exactly that. Newcastle's fan base is regularly cited as having one of the strongest, most rooted regional identities in the league, and it shows the moment you're in the ground. In Newcastle, the club isn't a part of the city's identity. It more or less is the city's identity. Sunderland carries something similarly intense, a fan base that treats the club almost like weather, permanent, uncontrollable, and inseparable from daily life, spending years in the lower divisions with attendances that stayed remarkably high the entire time. Leeds are relentlessly, exhaustingly dramatic, a club incapable of a quiet season, even when everyone involved would probably prefer one. Crystal Palace, named improbably after a Victorian glass exhibition hall, generate an outsized amount of noise relative to their size, and have recently started actually winning things after decades of comparatively little. And Everton remain the sentimental favorite for a lot of neutral fans, a genuinely historic club, 9 league titles, all won long before color television existed, whose own supporters consistently rate the club extremely highly on tradition and warmth, even through some genuinely difficult recent seasons. Then there are the two clubs where things get complicated and where the comment section tends to get loud. Chelsea's transfer approach in recent years has resembled someone playing a football management video game for the first time. Sign every promising teenager available, hand out contracts that stretch nearly a decade, accumulate what looks like an unmanageable glut of young talent, and somehow, repeatedly, have it work out into more silverware. Chelsea have already won nearly every major trophy available to an English club. Support Chelsea if you want a club that's simply incapable of being boring, for better or worse. Manchester City spent the better part of the last decade as the most dominant force English football has seen in the Premier League era, playing arguably the most meticulously organized football of the modern game, and producing a run of individual seasons from their strikers that bordered on statistically absurd. But nearly every trophy has arrived with some accompanying argument attached to it, about spending, about sustainability, about fairness. With Pep Guardiola's departure, City are entering genuinely uncharted territory for the first time in years, which, if nothing else, makes this a fascinating season to actually watch unfold. Maybe you want none of the above. No chaos, no baggage, no blood pressure spikes. Fulham are, by measurable fan sentiment surveys, consistently the least disliked club in the Premier League, a genuinely pleasant, low-drama club with a beautiful riverside ground and a fan base that seems to inspire almost no hostility anywhere else in the league. Aston Villa carry real, substantial history, a European Cup win in the early 80s that their supporters have, fairly, never stopped mentioning, combined with a passionate, largely low-toxicity fan base and genuine European pedigree. And Nottingham Forest are perhaps the most improbable entry on this list, a club with more European Cups than league titles, having won the continent's biggest prize in back-to-back seasons decades ago, a genuinely staggering achievement for a club of their relative size, and their fans, much like Arsenal's, get criticized occasionally for being loud about a club the wider football world still tends to underestimate. So, that's all 20. Here's the part that actually matters more than any of it. There's no real wrong answer in this list, except one specific mistake. Don't pick a club purely because they're winning right now. Trophies move around constantly. City are learning that in real time this season, and Arsenal waited the better part of 2 decades for theirs. What doesn't move around nearly as much is how it actually feels to belong to a club, week after week, across the seasons that don't make the highlight reels. So pick based on how you want to feel on a cold, wet Tuesday night in February. 0-0, 40 minutes gone, absolutely nothing happening. Because that, more than any trophy, is what actually being a football supporter is.